Welcome to Dubrovnik and the third edition of the Nobel Spirit session from the stunning location of the Rector's Palace in the very heart of the old city of Dubrovnik in Croatia. My name is Mark Thomas. Welcome to Dubrovnik and the third edition of the Nobel Spirit session from the stunning location of the Rector's Palace in the heart of the old city of Dubrovnik, Croatia. My name is Mark Thomas. I'm honoured today to be joined in this spectacular setting by three Nobel laureates, as well as the president of the International Society for Applied Biological Sciences. And I would also like to thank you, our audience, as well as the viewers on Croatia Radio Television. So, let's meet our guests today. Firstly, I would like to introduce you to Sir Richard John Roberts from the UK. Hello from the UK, UK to the UK.
Yes,
who won a Nobel Prize in 1993.
I did indeed.
Welcome to Dubrovnik. Is your first time to Dubrovnik?
No, I've been here before. It's a beautiful city. I would come again at a moment's notice.
Have you had time to explore the old city?
Not this time, no. Dragan has kept us very busy.
He's got you working. He's got the whip out and got you working. Next we have with us today Professor Thomas Südhof. Yes? Your surname's a little tricky. I haven't got to Aaron yet, that's my worst one. From the University of Stanford, who won the Nobel Prize in 2013. First time to Dubrovnik?
Yes, indeed, yeah.
And enjoying it?
It's a beautiful city. I haven't seen it yet. I look forward to visiting it tomorrow.
Oh, you haven't had much time to wander around the old city yet?
Not yet, no. But it will be a pleasure. From what I've seen up to now in these few moments, it's spectacular.
You'll take my friend with you and he'll show you all the sights. And now we have, this is the worst surname I have this evening, Professor Aaron Ciechanover.
Right.
Any good? Yes?
Perfect.
From Israel, who won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2004. Now, Professor, we have many students in the audience who I'm sure will be hanging off your every word. So what one piece of advice would you give to them?
Go after your heart. Just be passionate about what you are doing, because without passion and without real drive to do it, you'll never do it. And think of your career as a hobby. For me, I'm having a hobby and my university pays me for my hobby. So what else can you ask for?
They say if your work is a hobby, you never work a day in your life.
Right.
Yes. And finally, last but not least, the president of the International Society for Applied Biological Sciences, my friend, Professor Dragan Primorac. Welcome.
Thank you so much for
It seems strange to say welcome to Dubrovnik and welcome. Welcome.
It's always great to be in Dubrovnik.
So thanks to you, we are surrounded by Nobel laureates in Dubrovnik. So in reference to the ISABS conference, what really stands out, and more importantly, what makes you the proudest?
To be honest with you, 25 years ago when we have the idea was to bring the knowledge that existed during that time in the United States of America, and the friends from different areas of the medicine, including forensic genetics, anthropology genetics, and molecular medicine. We decided to put the concept together and to have gathering every other year in Croatia. It makes me happy to see that more than 6,000 participants attended, yes. 8 Nobel Prize laureates that I cannot thank enough for everything what they have done. More than 800 invited speakers, and recognition for this event worldwide, it's amazing.
It is. It was a very successful event, yes. It was a pleasure to be part of the event. I have some questions for it's my job. I have some questions for our professors tonight. I'm going to start with my friend from Israel. So, how did you come across the idea to study protein degradation? Can you tell us how this journey, which ended with the Nobel Prize, started, and explain to the people at home why this system is important to us?
Luckily, I didn't have to think about it because it was my mentor, Professor Abraham Hershko, who had the idea. But then I had to choose a mentor, and whenever I was a surgeon, and then I have to decide when I moved to science, I really had the option to select a mentor. So because I could stay in the operating theater. So I went to many mentors and they paved for me really a nice road. Oh, you will work on this protein and everything will be fine and this and that. And Avram, who just came from a postdoctoral fellowship, told me, I don't know what you are going to work. I have an hypothesis that there is a system that will degrade, will destroy proteins, which I'll explain to you in a minute, but it's risky. And I'm a risk taker, and I always knew that I can fall back on my surgery. So I chose the young mentor. He was just a non-tenured assistant professor, and we started the journey together, and it was a successful one, I must admit. Then for the discovery itself, we are built of proteins. The antibodies that we are making against COVID-19 are proteins. The red blood, hemoglobin that carries oxygen, is a protein. The muscle, the bones, everything is made of a protein that are produced by genes. We have 22,000 genes, more or less. This is the number. So we have more than 22,000 different proteins that makes us what we are. The problem with the protein that they have an Achilles heel. They are very sensitive. They are sensitive to mutations. They are sensitive to temperature. They hate high temperature. Actually, there is kind of a balance why we were created at 37 centigrade. We should have been created at minus 20. That's the safest temperature for proteins, but we need to be alive and processes have to go on kinetically. So side by side with our evolution, we had to evolve a system that will remove damaged protein. Think about a meat that is made of protein and you are leaving it at room temperature for a few minutes. Nothing will happen, but few hours, you come back, it stinks, you have to throw it away. So proteins always are damaged by temperature, by oxygen, by mutations. And nature had to evolve a compensatory system. And we identified this compensatory system. It turned out that it is involved in the mechanism of many diseases, including malignancies and neurodegenerative diseases. And accordingly, pharma companies walked in, developed many drugs that are already available in the market, saved the lives or improved the quality of life of many patients, millions of patients worldwide. And of course, it's satisfactory. I just want to add one comment. When we started this journey, we had no clue about Nobel Prize. We didn't think of diseases, we didn't think of drugs, we didn't think of anything. We were driven by curiosity, by an open question in biology. That was our main drive. And that's the beauty of science, that it evolves not by us. We just laid the foundation. Then other people came, discovered the diseases, other people came, discovered the drugs. And that's the beauty of science, that it's an international community that talks to one another and builds on one another's achievement. And it has been an unbelievable, exciting journey.
It was certainly a journey. And a risk taker. I like that. Sir Richard, could you briefly describe your collaboration with the legendary Nobel laureate, Professor James D. Watson? What was he like, and what was it like working in his research group?
Well, I didn't work in his research group. So I was offered a job at Cold Spring Harbor. He was head of Cold Spring Harbor at the time. And I think as soon as I got there, actually within a couple of weeks, we started fighting because he had hired me to do one thing and I wanted to do something else because there was already two groups doing what he had hired me to do. And I think unnecessary competition is ridiculous. And so I found a way to persuade him that I was really doing what he wanted me to do, but I was actually doing what I wanted to do. Which I think has more or less characterized my life in science. That I always think if someone tells me this is what you should be doing, it must be kind of boring because they thought of it, and I prefer to work on things that I thought would be more interesting to do. And so far I've managed to get away with that.
Well done. Professor Südhof, could you tell us how this journey, which ended with the Nobel Prize, started, and explain for the people at home why discoveries of machinery, regulatory, vesicle traffic, a major transport system in our cells, is important for all of us? Another long journey. It's all journeys in that.
You're citing the exact words of the award that I'm grateful for, but that may not be obvious for people. It's actually a little less intuitively understandable as some of the other discoveries. So the way you have to think about this broadly is that in every cell, every eukaryotic cell, there are many subcellular compartments like the nucleus and the Golgi and the lysosomes, and they do different things. But these different subcellular compartments that are each encapsulated in membranes are constantly dynamically exchanging components with each other. And the way this works is that there's vesicular traffic, vesicles, small membrane particles that move between these various compartments. And this process is particularly important in the brain because nerve cells are so unusual cells that are very elongated and have very specialized properties. One of the most important properties of nerve cells is that they communicate with each other at synapses where they transfer information. So the work that we did was to try to understand how one nerve cell sends out a signal that another nerve cell then can recognize, which is the basic information transfer into information computation process that the brain does. And that occurs by vesicular traffic, not surprisingly, because that's what the Nobel Prize was for. So the idea here is that it's vesicles whose trafficking releases that signal, emits that signal, secretes the signal, that then transfers the information. And the way how it secretes it is already a process of information processing. It's already a computational process. And thereby, studying this and elucidating its basic mechanisms provided insight into how nerve cells and the brain communicate with each other. And you would never know it when you read the citation, but that's basically what it was.
Professor Primorac, you and the St. Catherine Hospital are leading the process of integrating personalized medicine into clinical practice. How does it influence your routine clinical work?
Well, as we hear today from Professor Ciechanover, the old concept of the medicine, one size fits all, is gone. There's no any doubt about that. So each patient is unique, and that's the way how we should treat or diagnose those patients. So in our concept that we do, it's a very, very clear paradigm that we would like to use some special features of every single patient in order to make proper diagnosis that will help us to get right treatment, or what we are calling the right therapy for the right patient at the right time. So if you don't understand genetics, glycomics, proteomics, everything what is a part of the cell function, you are not able to have that. So, for example, we are trying to lead the process in the field of the regenerative medicine. So we are applying for a while, almost 7 years now, mesenchymal stromal stem cells in order to treat patients with osteoarthritis, and showing that after this treatment, basically you are reducing inflammation and helping those cells who are surviving to produce the main components of the cartilage. Simultaneously, we are going on different direction. We are also doing a lot of pharmacogenomics, and pharmacogenomics, as you know, annually, only in the United States of America, that's data 15 years old, about 150,000 people dying completely healthy because of adverse drug reaction. The only way how you can predict what is the best treatment is through pharmacogenetics. We are doing with our partners from the Mayo Clinic, we are doing analysis of 25 different genes for 111 polymorphism, which is more than enough to test 300 different drugs. We also do a lot of predictive testing. With other partners, we have the new system analyzing 294 different genes to predict sudden cardiac death, because we are analyzing all genes and mutations related to the sudden cardiac death. So basically, the concept is that we are going toward medicine of the 22nd century with completely new concept. We need very, very much educated physicians. We need people who understand the science, and that's what is our concept in the hospital.
What was that? The right patient? I like that.
The right patient, the right time, with the right treatment.
That's a good sound. That's the soundbite that you need. That's the one. Professor Aaron, is in your opinion the direction in which science is going with regards to fighting malignant diseases the right one?
Well, the result will tell, but there is no doubt that we understand now malignancies and the basic science much better than we did understand it before. And there are several revolutions that we are already see. So I'll give you just one example. For years, people wondered, how is it that the immune system doesn't see the tumor? The tumor is foreign. It expresses foreign antigens. So how is it that it escapes under the radar of the immune system? And then people realized that the tumor is tricky, but we can be trickier. And what they did, they developed immune therapy. There is a Nobel Prize that was given to two scientists, to Jim Allison and to Tsuku Honjo, on discovering the immune therapy. So what they did, they looked at the system and they saw that it's like a car. You have a brake and you have a gas, and you are driving with a balance. So what they do, they neutralized the brake a little bit and they accelerated the gas. So they inhibited the inhibitor of the ubiquitins they inhibited the inhibitor of the immune system. So if you are inhibiting the inhibitor, you are accelerating. So they developed antibodies called PD-L1 and CTLA4 that inhibit the inhibition of the immune system, and by that they accelerated the immune system, and now the immune system can see the tumor. They started with melanoma, that was a deadly disease. Within no time, once it discovered with metastasis, it was deadly. Now people are being cured. And now the principle is moving to lung cancer, it's moving to the brain, it's moving to other tumors. Another one is multiple myeloma, which is a kind of leukemia. It's a blood cancer, very common blood cancer. It's 20% of all leukemias. And drugs that are based on the system that we discovered, on the ubiquitin system, are now in the market. So we are doing a huge progress. Unfortunately, some diseases are yet undruggable. Some oncogenes are yet undruggable, like KRAS. Some tumors are really deadly. With the diagnosis, unfortunately, the patients are still getting the death penalty, quote unquote, like brain cancer, glioblastoma, pancreatic cancer, many of the hepatic. But I am quite optimistic that we shall solve, the scientific community, along with the clinical community, will solve these problems. But I think that you see now more and more patients that are living with higher quality of life for a longer period, and therefore the number of living cancer patients is increasing among us, and we see it, and it's partially due to the development of these novel treatments.
I like this description of easing off the brake and putting the foot on the accelerator.
You are leaving the brake off and you are pushing the gas. The immune system is accelerated with side effects because it acts against the body as well. So you see a lot of side effects that the body immunizes, develops antibodies against the body itself. It's called autoimmunity. But nevertheless, it's a huge progress, the immune therapy. Huge progress.
We'll keep this in science, this off the brake and on the accelerator, not on the road. Not on the road. I don't want to
try to be as simple as you can with your explanation.
Yes. Sir Richard. Sir Richard or Professor Richard? Which do you prefer?
I actually prefer to be called Rich.
Rich?
If that's okay.
Is that a little bit informal? I'm not sure. Are we all happy with Rich?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm happy with Aaron.
Perfect. Put it this way, my friends call me Rich.
Then I'm a friend. Rich.
Exactly.
Rich.
Good.
Professor Rich, maybe.
No,
Rich.
No, just Rich.
What perspectives and challenges do you expect in the future of molecular biology?
Well, for me, I work on bacteria. I find all these eukaryotic cells are a little too complicated. I don't understand them so well. But bacteria, in principle, I think before I die, we can figure out how one of them actually works. And I think if we can figure out how a bacterium works, we're going to get a very deep view of what is important in life. Because, we all actually evolve from bacteria or archaea or some very simple forms. And bacteria are really key to our health. So if we kill all the bacteria that are living with you, you will die. You need the bacteria. And in fact, in your gut, there are more nerve connections into the stomach than there are to any other organism in the body. And so the bacteria are constantly sending messages to the brain and to elsewhere. We don't fully understand how that all works, but I think Tom will agree this is going to be quite important to understand the messaging that is taking place between the bacteria in the gut and the brain. And I find this really exciting. I think this is terrific. And since I work on bacteria, of course, I'm totally biased. I really think that bacteria are very important, and I love them, and I want to work out how they work.
I think that's the first time I've heard the sentence, "I love bacteria."
That's because you've not been to too many of my lectures.
True, true. If I came more, I'd hear that sentence more often. I love bacteria. Thank you. Can we go to Tom? I heard him say Tom. Is that too interesting?
Tom's fine.
Professor Tom.
Can call me anything you like.
How does the understanding of transport systems in our cells enable us to develop personalized therapy and treat neurological diseases such as Alzheimer's and autism?
You're asking for a big stretch here.
We have time. We have time.
Come back to something Rich just said, which is, I think, very profound, which is basically that even for a bacterium, some of which, the mineral bacteria, have something, 400 genes or 500 genes or something like this, right? Even there, we don't actually understand how they work. So the challenge of understanding a eukaryotic cell is much bigger. The challenge for understanding a community of eukaryotic cells as exists in an organ is even bigger. The brain is probably one of the most complex organs because of the diversity of cell types more than anything. Understanding how genes are involved in various diseases is probably the biggest common challenge and theme that goes through current medicine. It not only applies to the brain, it, for example, applies to cancer as well, where we have a large number of genes that contribute to either the initiation or the progression of cancer, for example, metastases. For diseases of the brain, the same thing occurs in that there are genes that are involved in disease processes such as Alzheimer's disease, as I discussed today, but basically any disease, schizophrenia. And the challenge now is how can we translate this into some kind of medical progress. And I would argue that in order to translate this, we need to better understand these genes themselves and how they act. It's been difficult for bacteria, it's even more difficult for eukaryotic cells. If we make progress on this, we can apply that knowledge. It's easiest for cancer, where you know when a particular gene, especially growth factor related gene or something like this, goes rogue, you can target it with a drug. In the brain it's not as easy because it's unclear why actually the diseases develop. For example, in schizophrenia, you get an imbalance of circuits. You get an imbalance of communication between different parts of the brain. So it's not as straightforward to identify drug targets. This has nothing to do with vesicular traffic, I'm afraid. This is more related to how nerve cells communicated with each other at synapses and how the supporting cells, the glia cells, that are doing as much work in the brain as the nerve cells themselves, are actually conditioning the computational work that the nerve cells are doing and what is happening in these diseases. And I'd be happy to talk about this for a long time if we had that time, but I don't think we have that.
We don't have that long, no. But thank you.
But there is good news. It means that there are jobs for you guys.
Yes, well done.
Going forward, and your children and probably your grandchildren, they're going to have no problems finding jobs in this field.
Jobs for life.
Yes.
Well, not necessarily for life, but certainly jobs that, it's actually amazing that, I don't know what the situation is in Croatia, but in the area of molecular medicine, broadly speaking, there's a huge lack of people. There's a huge demand for people. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is truly amazing. There's lots of career opportunities, lots of opportunities to actually have a really satisfying professional life.
Is this the same situation in Croatia?
More or less, yes, that's correct. And that's why it made me incredibly happy to have such best students with us today, because basically all what we do we do for the future, and you are the future, simply like that, and make me incredibly happy that you are with us. But we are trying to focus on the one, I would say, word which is excellence. Average is something that is not going to bring progress.
Exactly.
And we are really working with these young fellows to be excellent in everything what they do in life. And that's especially important for the small countries such as Croatia and Israel. Otherwise, you're not able globally to survive.
Exactly.
So this desire is even stronger in Croatia, and I have great hope in you. That's how I feel.
Being average is an enemy. This is more of a personal question, but what do you think is the root or reason for the occurrence of social movements such as anti-vaccination and anti-GMO? How do you see the role of scientists in that context?
Well, that of course is very controversial.
Yes, that's why I like that question.
Yes.
That's me.
So, you know, I feel Mark Zuckerberg did a great disservice to humanity by starting Facebook. I think it gave an opportunity for people who really wanted to do evil in terms of trying to pollute conversations, in trying to spread misinformation. And if you think of how it all started, it started because Zuckerberg wanted to give his friends an opportunity to criticize young ladies at school. I mean, this is disgusting. This is not something that one should be doing. And I think what's happened is because Facebook is rampant, I bet all of you have accounts, yeah? Do you all have Facebook accounts? No, you don't? I don't, but an awful lot of young people.
The younger generation are more on Instagram or TikTok.
Well, whatever. But they're all essentially the same.
Exactly.
They provide a route to spread misinformation, and then thanks to artificial intelligence, the AI community have figured out how to make sure that as soon as you see something you like, you're going to get more of it. And so it just amplifies misinformation when it comes out. And science hasn't really yet come up with a good way of convincing people when misinformation occurs. We don't have a good route to doing this. All we can do is talk in conversations like this. We can give lectures. I go to schools and talk to kids about things. This is all we can do, but that's on a small scale. The misinformation that is available on the internet is on an absolutely enormous scale. And I think we do need to find a way to stop the misinformation and to give science the opportunity to show what is done. You know, there are a number of famous people who've quoted, you know, the thing about science is it deals with facts. You get some experiments, you get some results, you get a fact. Doesn't matter whether you think it's true or not, it's a fact. It's true. And other people will go and try to really make waves to stop you from thinking of what's going on. And Aaron gave a very nice talk this morning talking about what was going on with the anti-vax movement. I mean, this is really crazy. Vaccines are the best medicine we've ever had. We've never come up with anything better than vaccines. And then to find that people are trying to say that they don't work, they cause problems, is just ridiculous. You know, we have so many years where we've known that these are the best medicines we have. And then someone like Andrew Wakefield comes along and says, oh, vaccines cause autism. I mean, it's crazy. And it was all fraudulent. And I think the fact that he's not in jail is quite appalling, personally.
So you're talking about Andrew Wakefield, who had his article published in The Lancet.
Exactly.
That
right.
Andrew Wakefield.
Yeah, that one.
The Lancet, on their defence, did present the article later.
Well, yes, but you have to...
I agree the damage was already done, but... Yes.
As soon as you scare people,
yes,
it is very difficult to reassure them. And the anti-GMO people have had the same effect. It is very difficult to reassure people once they're afraid. Hollywood discovered this a long time ago. You know, they come up with all of these movies designed to scare you, and a lot of people still are scared by Frankenstein and possibilities. So,
have any of you, question for all of you, you brought this up, have any of you, this might be a strange question, but have any of you come into an argument on social media with some of these anti-vaccine people? Have any of you commented or came into some situation?
No, I've had personal contacts with people who were anti-vax, but I don't use social media, so I've not had that opportunity.
So did you sit down and try to explain? How far did you get?
Well, so I'll tell you a story. I talked to a chiropractor and his wife. And I did so at the behest of their son, who worked at the company. And so I go and I talk to them. This chiropractor was anti-vaccine. He wouldn't wear a mask. He wouldn't tell the people who were coming into his office that he was not vaccinated. And he was adamant that vaccines didn't work. There was nothing to do with them. And I gave all the usual arguments, many of the things that Aaron was saying earlier today. And the only positive result from that was that his wife, who'd previously not been vaccinated because of his beliefs, secretly went and got vaccinated without telling him. So 50-50 success there.
Yes, this was a... But a chiropractor isn't really a doctor, is
No.
So he wasn't telling patients that he hadn't been vaccinated,
Right.
and his wife didn't tell him that she'd been vaccinated.
Exactly.
Okay, fair enough. No comment?
Well, you know, when you're in a marriage, there are some things that you talk about and some that you don't.
Clearly vaccine is not one of them. Clearly vaccine is not one of them. Professor Dragan, Professor Primorac, you're investing a tremendous amount of energy in student education. When I say the word mentorship, please all listen to this, what does that mean to you?
I think most of us are aware of the fact that mentor is having, I would say, the key role in your scientific educational life. And I'm glad to see your mentors here, the people who really help you to get this award. But when I started my career, I had a mentor who was brilliant, and he was telling me one sentence that I remember for the rest of my life. Basically, he was telling me, the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams, which is fantastic. And the other friend who became mentor was President of Israel, Shimon Peres. When I was very young, almost 30 years ago, he told me, Dragan, you don't have right to dream small. If you dream small, that's exactly what is going to happen to you. So I wish you really to dream big. And I think our role is very, very simple. To listen our students and to help them to go in direction they wanted to go. I mean, you see what Rich said. Actually, something similar happened to me. If he listened every single sentence that somebody was telling him, he may never get a Nobel Prize. He has freedom, but at the same time, mentor was wise and allowed him to do that. And I think it's important, very important for all of us to listen. And what I witnessed today, it's very simple. The experience of the mentor is critical for the success of the student. If you're having an experienced mentor, maybe he wishes to do the best, but he doesn't know the path how to do it. And my advice is always to be maximally exposed, to be critical. There's one country that I was having problems at the beginning of my career, that's Israel, because everyone is telling you in the face exactly what they think, which is completely opposite that what I experienced in Croatia. And the reason is very simple, that people are looking for the truth. And everything what we do in life, it's for the truth. And that was for me amazing experience. I was giving a lecture and I was stopped at least 10 times during my lecture. I never experienced that in my life. And even few of them told me, you know, doctor, we disagree with what you just said. And it was in Haifa. But anyhow, you know, the message is very simple. I think the future depends on what you're going to do today. So think strategically, have the right mentor, dream big, and that's exactly what is going to happen to you.
Is it true about Israelis?
I couldn't have added more on the issue of, what about the Israelis? You know, because of what he said, and because I tell people exactly what I think of them, I don't have a single friend. But about mentorship, Dragan is completely right. Mentorship, you know, when people are asking me about the secrets of success, as if I have ones, mentorship really comes first. And I really was lucky to have mentors all along the way from high school to my medical school and then my PhD, Avram Hershko. And then I was trained with an excellent mentor at the MIT when I did my postdoc with Harvey Lodish. And they are very different because you need a different mentor for every step in your life. Because when I became a graduate student with Avram and I started my way into science, I had no clue what is a pH. I didn't know anything. I came from the operating theater. All what I knew is, you know, to cut on patients and to extract gallbladders. And Avram really took me hand by hand and explained me what's going on. And then I felt that it's time to become independent and to fly out of the nest. And when I came to Harvey Lodich, there was a big lab with 30 postdocs, and he told me, don't show up until you are desperate. Find the solution yourself. Exactly like what Rich just pointed out at the beginning of this meeting. So you need different mentor at different stage, but I must admit that all along the way, I had excellent mentors that at the end brought me to independence. And the clue in science is independence. This is your real test. You are coming with your own ideas, you prove in the lab that they are correct, and here you go. So mentorship is clearly role modeling. Basically, it's role modeling. You want to mimic in a way or to take the best out of each mentor. And of course, that along a career of 30 years, you have different mentors that are accompanying you.
I'm picking up this independence, but with teamwork. Independence with teamwork. I'm going to open the floor. Some questions from the students here. Are you ready? Who has the first question?
Could I say one thing about mentorship?
Yes, fire away.
Don't imagine that the person you work for is going to be the best mentor for you. I had an interesting experience. When I was doing my PhD in organic chemistry, I worked for the professor, but it turned out my mentor, the one who really taught me more than anything else, was a Japanese postdoc in the lab. He taught me how to do organic chemistry. He taught me to play chess, not chess, Go, Japanese chess. He was fantastic. He had a bigger influence on me than almost anyone I can imagine. So it's not always the professor who is the person. You need to look around and find the person who is going to help you.
What about you and mentors? Favorite mentor? Well, we're in mentor stories. So.
A lot has been said already. There's very little I can add. Maybe never forget that in the end you choose your mentors. Your mentors don't choose you. So in other words, sometimes people don't have a choice and they just have to accept where they are put. But most of the time you can make your own choices, where you're going to go, who you're going to work with, what path you're going to go into. And I would agree completely that it's more important with whom you work than what the actual area is in which you work. In other words, I see often people choosing particular labs to work in as a scientist because I think the area is particularly fancy and sexy and whatever. It's more important to have someone you can work with who you can respect and who you think is actually going to basically inspire you and help you and support you, instead of working in a particularly attractive area of science. It's really, the independence starts before you even start. You need to have your own brain. You need to have your own decisions from the very beginning. Yeah.
Are you all listening? I hope. Keenly listening. So yes, we have some questions from the floor. First question tonight.
So I have a question for Professor Ciechanover. How did you find out that you won the Nobel Prize? And what was the reaction of your family, friends and colleagues?
Well, as I said initially, the Nobel Prize was not a target. You must be nuts to think of the Nobel Prize. We were curiosity driven, but let's don't be naive. Towards the end, we realized that we are playing the big game. Not because of us, because the drug companies came in, books came out, we were cited thousands of times. We got some other prestigious prizes like the Lasker. So you realize that you are playing the big game, but you never know. It was a nice surprise, of course. So I jumped to the ceiling, and then I landed back, and then I jumped again. But then, luckily, I was quite young, a little bit older than Rich when he got it. But then you celebrate one day, and you celebrate the second day, and then what do you do with yourself? You know what? You go back to the lab. And that's what I do. I have a vivid lab, excellent postdocs, MD, PhD students, grants, and of course I took more responsibilities. So I'm more involved in education in Israel, I'm more involved in education now. What we are doing now is kind of an educational assembly, convention, whatever, educational act. So I mostly devote myself to education out of the lab. I'm also running a few Israeli NGOs, like I'm the president of the Israel Cancer Society, which is an NGO helping patients. I'm also the president of the Israel ALS Society, which is a devastating disease, really devastating disease. And, but most of the time I'm devoting to science, and of course I don't appeal the decision of the committee. I'm happy with it, but then you're going back to your life.
Thank you very much. We have another question.
So I have a question for Professor Südhof. What do you think are the main differences between in the education and science between Europe and the United States, and which of those approaches do you prefer?
That's a trick.
So by way of background, for those of you, for those of you who don't know, I was educated in Germany. I'm German. I still have a German passport, but I've lived most of my life in the United States. I went to the United States in my mid-20s to study with two people who I admired, who I think are great scientists. This was my decision. That's what I was referring to as choosing your mentors. I think I made a good choice at that point. I think the two systems are extremely different. I've left Germany now 40 years ago, so I don't know exactly what the German system really is like anymore. But from my visits, I think what is better in Germany is that there is people are more grounded. There's less attention to personal income, to money. There's more equality. But what is worse, and that makes the United States much better, especially in science, but I think also in other areas, is that in the United States, science is dynamic and it is merit-based. There are dangers developing in those systems in the United States, but it's still more merit-based than any other country that I know of. What that means is that no matter what age you are, no matter what you do, if you do good work, you can get funded and you can do your work. It is more flexible. In Germany, you have a very kind of set way of how things develop. You become a professor at a certain age and you stop being a professor at a certain age, and that limits, I think, the freedom of the people tremendously. I think that the German system also underfunds universities, and that's a specific problem that I can see. When I look in Europe in general, every country has a different system, and every country has advantages and disadvantages. I think the northern European countries are doing much better. That is Scandinavia, Netherlands, Germany, also Switzerland, than the southern European countries. I have no idea what science is like in Croatia. And the problem that I have pointed out in Germany are even worse, I believe, in countries like France or Spain, where people become very much sort of into systems, set into a place where they can't move anymore, where they can't develop anymore, and which makes it very difficult for them to be innovative. The positives, however, I have to say, is that in Germany at least, many cases there is less need to subscribe to fashions, to subscribe to whatever is the most recent thing that everybody is talking about. It's often more oriented towards content. So when you look at university rankings, a lot of universities all the world over have optimized their ways of operating on coming up in the rankings. And I think that that's very misleading, because when I visit these universities and I actually talk to the people and I figure out what's going on, it's often not at all reflected in what's happening in terms of the intellectual life, in terms of the achievements. If I see some of the universities that are now ranked very highly, for example in Singapore, where I'm visiting sometimes and talking to people, these universities are ranked very highly, but the actual intellectual life that happens is not particularly interesting. In Europe in general, the universities outside of Britain are ranked much lower, but it's much more even, much more solid, much more different in terms of how people think about it. So it's a complex, I can't really say that the American universities are that much better or to work in. It's just a question of preference, a question of what you want to do with your life. And I think the European universities have a lot to offer, but they could, especially in terms of how they're organized, offer a lot more if they became a little less set in their ways.
I would like to ask Professor Primorac a couple of questions. You're coming from a small country, but you still made incredible achievements that are recognized worldwide. How did you achieve them, and what's the one you are personally the most attached to?
Thank you. If there's something to recommend to you, I would definitely say be ready to take a risk. That's something which I have done. It was early 90s, I was young MD, entering to United States to finish my PhD in Connecticut, close to New Haven, Yale. And when I landed, there's one man who was hero. He's sitting right here, Professor Richard Roberts, because I was entering to the area of working with messenger RNA in one disease called brittle bone disease, and we tried to understand, and we found splicing mutation. And we follow his work, and guess what's happened? Just 2 years after that, we discovered mutation, which is responsible for a mild type of the brittle bone disease. You know, and my life after that went in a completely different direction. I never expected that I'm going to work on forensic genetics. Unfortunately, we had war in Croatia and Bosnia. So friends from the region called me, they said, we have a lot of mass graves, we are not able to identify those people. And I didn't know anything about forensics, but I entered forensics, and with the people from the FBI, Connecticut State Police, New York State Police, United States Army, we were pioneering for the first time identification skeletal remains from mass graves in a split Croatia. Few years after that, I went in a completely different direction, working on population genetics. That's the paper, what the origin of European man by Y chromosome analysis, we published Science. Few years after that, we published in the Nature, out of Africa migration. And it's very simple. In my opinion, you should dream big. You should take a risk. You should not be afraid. Nobody is able to stop you if you know the direction where you are going. And it doesn't matter if you are coming from the small country such as Croatia or Israel. I mean, we had from Israel here at least 3 Nobel Prize laureates. So don't be afraid, have a good mentor, be brave, and make risk in your life.
Thank you. A question for Sir Richard Roberts. Do you think we'll learn anything from the COVID-19 pandemic? And will it be taken as an opportunity to maybe better recognize and eventually solve bioethical and societal issues rather than just a problem? Thank you.
Well, I think there's no doubt we've lost a lot as a result of... Sorry, the question was whether or not we've lost a lot during the COVID pandemic. And is there something good that can come out of it, right? Would that be about the way you want? Yeah. Okay. So I think we've lost a lot because we didn't respond very well worldwide, but we've also gained a great deal. So we've shown that these messenger RNA vaccines can be made quickly, they work, and they're very good, and they can be applied to a lot of other things. So I work for a company, a small company. We make reagents for research. And so we were anticipating maybe we were going to have, not as much income coming in because a lot of people were not doing research. They couldn't get into the labs. We sell to people who go to the labs. But it turned out that to make the messenger RNA vaccine, Moderna were buying enzymes from us in order to make the vaccine. Pfizer too bought an enzyme from us to make their vaccine. So for us, it turned out we actually gained a great deal of income because of the pandemic. For us, it was really good. And I think there have been many other places where it's turned out to be really good from a financial, economic standpoint. But of course, when you look at the societal issues, the fact that the kids weren't, in the US at least, they had to work remotely, they missed all of the personal contacts that are so important when kids are growing up. And we didn't do a very good job. We had a president who was basically an idiot and didn't know what he was talking about. And he was trying to write an agenda for dealing with the COVID vaccines that went against everything that the scientists were saying. He didn't want to listen to the scientists. And so I think one thing we learned as a result of that is that politicians really should listen to the scientists. If they're going to do the very best they can for the country, you want to listen to the best scientists, and ultimately this is why countries fund science, in order to learn so that they can make life better for everybody. So I think it's been a mixed experience, but I think we have learned a lot from it, and I'm rather hoping that politicians in the future will do a much better job of listening to the science and deciding, well, it is worth listening to what people have to say, even though maybe it doesn't always jive with the politics that I would like to be pushing, but maybe they just need to adjust their politics a little so that they can take full advantage of the science.
I'm going to leave the final word to you today. So the impact of these conferences you started 25 years ago is certainly great. How and why did you decide to initiate it? And I'm going to leave the final word to you on this year's conference. What have you achieved?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank for our friends who came. I mean, they dedicated time to be with young fellows and to really to spread the knowledge and to share the knowledge. I think, you know, it's an incredible achievement for all of us. There's no any doubt about that. Because I think this TV show can change your life, and that's a mission from all of us. If we did that, I think we will be successful. And if you're looking at the future of the science, I really have to thank Mayo Clinic for partnering with us for more than 20 years, St. Catherine Hospital, International Society for Applied Biological Sciences, American Academy for Forensic Science, which is helping us tremendously in the field of the forensics. But all what we are doing, it's really for you, for students, because you are the future. And our goal is to go strong forward, and most likely the next focus will be on regenerative medicine, on the personalized medicine. We are very much interested to see what we can do. We may create artificial organ from your own cells. That's the idea where we are going. But indeed, we do have to be careful. We have to follow all ethical, moral values, everything what is important for the science today. And you know, it makes me incredibly happy and motivated to be in Dubrovnik. I'm proud Croat. And everything what is coming from Croatia, it makes me double happy. So, would like to thank you once again for hosting us. Would like to thank you, Aaron, Tom, Rick. Thank you so much for being a great friend and for coming to Croatia to share your knowledge.
Yes, I can only echo those thoughts. Thank you very much for all being here. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much for your words. I'm sure that you've inspired more than a few people tonight. Thank you for watching at home. To all of our audience, I'd like to say, in front of me and at home, I'd like to say thank you and come to enjoy the Pearl of the Adriatic.